The morning sun rose over New Busan Colony like it had for the past 50 years. Park Dae-ho stood on his office balcony, watching the farmers tend their rice fields in the valley below. The old man smiled as children ran through the streets, their laughter echoing off the simple metal buildings that made up their small town. New Busan was not a rich colony. They had no fancy technology or powerful weapons. The people worked hard, growing food and mining metals from the nearby mountains. Park Dae-ho had been the colony administrator for 20 years. He knew every family, every child, every story of struggle and joy on this peaceful world of Hanuel 7. 3 million kilometers above the planet, Kim So-ra floated in the mining station that orbited their world. She pressed her face against the observation window, looking down at the blue and green planet where she had been born 32 years ago. Her shift at the orbital mining facility would end soon, and she looked forward to going home to see her parents and younger brother. The mining station was small with only 50 workers. They processed the rare metals that the surface miners sent up on cargo ships. It was boring work, but So-ra liked the quiet. She could think about her plans to open a small restaurant in the colony's main town. Her grandmother's recipes were famous and she wanted to share them with more people. Lee Tae-min sat in the communications center, monitoring the radio signals that came from other human colonies. At 24, he was the youngest person ever to work in such an important job. His job was to listen for news from Earth and other human worlds and to send messages when the colony needed supplies or help. Most days were quiet. Today felt different. Strange signals had been coming from the edge of their solar system for the past week. Tae-min had reported them to Park Dae-ho, but the old administrator said they were probably just solar storms or broken satellites from the old survey missions. Tae-min was not so sure. The signals had a pattern to them like they were made by intelligent beings, but no human ships were supposed to be out there. The nearest human colony was 6 months away by the fastest ship they had. Unknown to the peaceful colonists, death was coming for them. The Veltar fleet moved through space like a school of metal fish. Their ships were beautiful and terrible, made of a crystal-like material that sparkled with inner light. Each ship was the size of a city, carrying thousands of warriors and enough weapons to destroy planets. Commander Zenthara stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the small blue world ahead of them. His species had conquered 43 worlds in the past 5 years. This human colony would be number 44. The Veltar were tall beings, nearly 3 meters high, with bodies covered in natural crystal armor. Their faces were sharp and angular, with 4 eyes that could see much more than human eyes. They believed they were the most perfect species in the galaxy, chosen by the universe to rule over all others. Zenthara had studied the reports about humans. They seemed to be a weak species, spreading slowly through space with simple technology. Their colonies were small and poorly defended. Most species the Veltar conquered put up fierce fights, but humans appeared to be farmers and merchants, not warriors. This would be an easy victory. The Veltar would destroy the colony, take any useful resources, and move on to the next target. It was how they had built their empire, and it had worked perfectly for centuries. The commander gave the order to attack. Down on the planet, Park Dae-ho was eating lunch when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the emergency center where Tae-min was frantically working at his radio equipment. "Sir, there are ships in orbit," the young man said, his voice shaking. "Big ships. They're not human ships." Park Dae-ho felt ice in his stomach. In 50 years of colonial administration, he had never faced anything like this. He activated the colony-wide emergency broadcast system. "All citizens, this is Administrator Park. We have unknown ships in orbit around our world. Please move to the emergency shelters immediately. Stay calm and help your neighbors," but there was no time. The first Veltar beam weapon struck the power station. The lights went out across the colony. The second volley hit the spaceport, destroying the few small ships that might have carried people to safety. The third strike took out the communications tower. Kim So-ra watched in horror from the orbital mining station as beams of brilliant energy lanced down from the alien ships. Where they touched the ground, everything simply vanished. Buildings, fields, roads, people, all turned to glowing plasma in seconds. She tried to call the surface, but all communications were dead. The mining station's sensors showed massive energy readings as the alien ship systematically destroyed every trace of human civilization on the planet below. In the town that had been his home for decades, Park Dae-ho helped load children into the underground shelters. The adults knew it was hopeless, but they went through the motions anyway. If they were going to die, they would die protecting their young ones. The old man thought about his granddaughter, safe in a school on Earth. At least she would survive. At least someone would remember New Busan Colony and the simple, good people who had lived here. Lee Taemin worked desperately at his emergency radio, trying to send a message to other human colonies. The main transmitter was destroyed, but he had a small backup unit that might reach the communication satellites. His fingers flew over the controls as the building shook from nearby explosions. He had to tell someone what was happening. Earth needed to know that aliens had found them, that they were not alone in the galaxy, and that these new neighbors were hostile. The message was simple. New Busan Colony under attack by unknown alien force. They are destroying everything. Warn other colonies, tell Earth we tried to. The building collapsed. Taemin's message cut off in the middle of the transmission. High above, Kim So-ra watched the planet die. The beautiful blue and green world where 3 million humans had lived and loved and dreamed slowly turned red, then black, as the alien weapons turned the entire surface into molten rock. The mining station's computers recorded everything. When it was over, the alien ships simply left, moving on to their next target as if nothing important had happened. So-ra was alone, the only survivor of New Busan Colony, floating in space above a dead world. She activated the station's emergency beacon and prepared for the long wait for rescue. She did not know that her survival would change the galaxy forever. The Veltar had made their first mistake. They had murdered humans and left a witness. 6 months after the destruction of New Busan Colony, the emergency meeting room in Geneva was filled with the most powerful people in human space. The underground chamber had been built to survive nuclear war, but today, it housed something more, dangerous than atomic weapons. It contained human anger. Admiral Choi Byung-ho entered the room like a storm cloud. At 65 years old, he had spent his entire adult life protecting human colonies from pirates, criminals, and natural disasters. He had never imagined he would need to protect them from alien invaders. The Admiral's gray uniform was perfectly pressed, but his eyes showed the strain of 6 months without proper sleep. Since receiving Kim So-ra's rescue beacon and her terrible recordings, he had worked 18 hours a day preparing for this moment. Dr. Yoon Hye-jin was already seated, at the long table, her laptop open and displaying star charts covered in red markers. Each red dot represented a human colony that might be next on the alien target list. As the Director of Strategic Intelligence, she had spent her career analyzing human enemies, drug cartels, rebel groups, and criminal organizations. Studying an alien empire was much harder, but she had learned disturbing things. Captain Nam Woo-jin sat quietly in the corner, still wearing his black stealth suit. His ship, the Silent Arrow, had returned from alien space just yesterday. For 4 months, he had risked his life gathering information about humanity's new enemy. What he had discovered would change everything. The room filled as colony representatives. Military commanders and government officials took their seats. President Chen from Earth, Governor Williams from Mars, Administrator Petrova from the Jupiter stations. They all looked grim and determined. Admiral Choi stood and activated the main display screen. The image of New Busan Colony appeared, or what had once been New Busan Colony. Now it was just a ball of cooling rock, lifeless and black. 6 months ago, 3 million humans died in a single day, the Admiral said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent room. They died because we were not ready. They died because we thought the galaxy was a safe place for peaceful people. He pressed a button, and the display changed to show Kim So-ra's recordings from the mining station. Everyone in the room had seen these images before, but they watched again in respectful silence. The systematic destruction of an entire world, carried out with cold efficiency by beings who seemed to feel nothing. Dr. Yoon will brief us on what we know about our enemy, the Admiral continued. Dr. Yoon stood and began her presentation. Her voice was steady and professional, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. The aliens call themselves the Veltar Confederation. They are an empire that has been expanding through this part of the galaxy for over 200 years. We estimate they control at least 60 star systems and have destroyed or enslaved dozens of intelligent species. The display showed grainy images that Captain Nam had captured during his reconnaissance mission. The Veltar were tall and imposing, with crystalline armor that seemed to grow from their bodies. Their cities were beautiful but cold, built from the same crystal-like material as their armor. Their technology is advanced, especially their energy weapons and faster-than-light travel. However, they have weaknesses. Their society is rigid and hierarchical. They do not adapt quickly to new situations. Most importantly, they have always fought against species that were less advanced than themselves. Dr. Yoon clicked to the next image, showing a Veltar military base. They are overconfident. In their records, which Captain Nam was able to access, they refer to humans as primitive mammals and consider us a minor threat at best. Captain Nam stood up for his part of the briefing. He was a small, quiet man who looked more like an accountant than a spy, but his pale face and tired eyes showed what his dangerous mission had cost him. I spent 4 months in Veltar space, he said simply. I visited 12 of their worlds and 3 major military bases. They have strong defenses, but they are designed to fight enemies who attack directly, with honor and predictable tactics. He paused, looking around the room at the faces of his fellow humans. They have never fought humans. They do not know what we are capable of when we are truly angry. The captain activated a holographic display showing detailed schematics of Veltar, ships and weapons. Their beam weapons are powerful, but they take time to charge between shots. Their ships are large and impressive, but they are not built for speed or maneuverability. They rely on their superior firepower to win battles quickly. President Chen leaned forward. What about their numbers? How many ships do they have? Approximately 8,000 combat vessels spread across their empire, Captain Nam replied. Most are assigned to garrison duty on conquered worlds. They can probably assemble a fleet of 2,000 ships for a major offensive. A murmur went through the room. Humanity's entire military consisted of fewer than 500 combat ships, most of them small patrol vessels designed for fighting pirates. Admiral Choi took control of the meeting again. Which brings us to the purpose of this gathering. We are here to authorize Operation Vengeful Thunder. The Admiral pressed another button, and the display showed humanity's plan for war. It was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. We will build the largest fleet in human history. Every shipyard in our space will work at maximum capacity. We will design new ships specifically to fight the Veltar. We will train new crews and develop new tactics. And then we will show these aliens what happens when you murder human civilians. Commander Hong Minji, the youngest fleet commander in human history at only 32, stood up from her seat. She had been quiet during the briefing, but now her eyes burned with cold fire. Admiral, I volunteered to lead the first strike force, she said. My brother lived on New Busan with his wife and 2 children. I want to be the one who makes the Veltar pay for their deaths. The Admiral nodded approvingly. Commander Hong had been one of his best students at the Naval Academy, and she had proven herself in battles against pirates and raiders. More importantly, she understood what this war was really about. Dr. Yoon spoke up again. The Veltar expect us to respond like other species they have conquered. They think we will either surrender immediately or fight a traditional defensive war, trying to protect our colonies one by one. They do not expect us to attack them in their own space. Captain Nam smiled grimly. During my reconnaissance, I identified 17 high-value targets in Veltar space: shipyards, command centers, supply depots. If we can hit them all simultaneously, we can cripple their military before they realize what is happening. The vote was unanimous. Every representative, every commander, every official in the room voted to approve Operation Vengeful Thunder. Humanity was going to war. As the meeting ended and people began to file out, Admiral Choi remained behind with his closest advisors. They had work to do, and not much time to do it. "How long do we have?" Dr. Yoon asked. "Intelligence suggests the Veltar are planning to attack more colonies within the next 18 months, the Admiral replied. "We need to be ready in 12 months, maybe less." Commander Hong looked at the star chart still displayed on the walls. "It is not enough time to build a conventional fleet large enough to match theirs. Then we will not build a conventional fleet," Admiral Choi said. "We will build something they have never seen before, something that will teach them why it was a mistake to make humans angry." Outside, in shipyards around Earth, Mars, and 100 other worlds, the work had already begun. Humanity was preparing for a war unlike any they had ever fought, against an enemy unlike any they had ever faced. The Veltar had awakened something in humans that had been sleeping since their ancestors first learned to make weapons from stone and bone. They had triggered the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, a human desire for justice. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. The Titan shipyards of Luna had never seen anything like it. Chief Engineer Kang Dong-wook stood on the observation deck, watching hundreds of workers swarm over the skeletal frame of humanity's first Retribution-class dreadnought. The massive ship stretched for 2 kilometers, its hull gleaming with new armor plating that sparkled with embedded crystals. Kang had been working for 36 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Around him, his engineering teams pushed themselves beyond their limits, welding hull plates, installing weapon systems, and connecting the millions of components that would make this ship humanity's instrument of vengeance. "Status report," Kang called out as he walked through the construction bay. His voice echoed off the curved walls of the massive chamber, built inside one of Luna's largest craters. "Forward weapons array is 60% complete," reported Young Min-ho, his deputy chief engineer. "The new crystal absorption armor is testing better than expected. When Veltar energy weapons hit it, the armor actually gets stronger." Kang nodded with satisfaction. The armor was humanity's secret weapon, developed by reverse engineering fragments, a Veltar crystal technology that Captain Nam had smuggled back from his reconnaissance mission. Instead of trying to block enemy weapons, the new armor would absorb their energy and reflect it back at the attackers. In another part of the shipyard, Dr. Shin Yoon-seo worked with her team of artificial intelligence specialists. They were creating the most advanced computer system humanity had ever built, one that could think and adapt faster than any biological mind. "The tactical AI is learning quickly," she told her assistant, Park Ji-won, as they watched streams of data flow across their monitors. "We have been feeding it every piece of information we have about Veltar tactics and technology. It can now predict their movements with 85% accuracy." The AI system was crucial to their plan. Veltar commanders were experienced and disciplined, but they followed predictable patterns based on thousands of years of successful conquests. The human AI would be able to anticipate their moves and counter them before they could adapt. Down on Earth, Colonel Bae Hyun-woo drilled his Marines in the harsh Australian desert. The men and women of the 1st Assault Battalion had volunteered for the most dangerous job in the coming war, boarding enemy ships and fighting Veltar warriors face to face. "Remember, their armor is nearly impossible to penetrate with conventional weapons," the colonel shouted, as his Marines practiced close-quarters combat techniques. "But they have weak points at the joints where their natural crystal plates connect. Hit them there, and they go down just like any other enemy." The Marines wore new powered armor suits designed specifically for fighting aliens. The suits enhanced their strength and speed, allowing humans to match Veltar physical advantages. More importantly, the suits contained small explosives that would detonate if a Marine was killed, ensuring that even in death, a human warrior would take enemies with him. Sergeant Kim Ha-young, a veteran of conflicts on Mars and Europa, led a squad through a mock-up of a Veltar ship interior. The walls were made of the same crystalline material as real Veltar vessels, based on intelligence gathered during Captain Nam's mission. "Move fast and stay together," she called to her troops as they advanced through the narrow corridors. Veltar ships have automated defense systems, but they are designed to fight large groups. Small, fast-moving teams can avoid most of their sensors. In orbit around Mars, Captain Lee Ga-eun commanded the first squadron of Hunter-class frigates. These ships were small and fast, built for reconnaissance and hit-and-run attacks. Her job was to map every Veltar position in known space and identify the best targets for the coming offensive. The Hunter-class ships used advanced stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to Veltar sensors. They could slip into enemy space, gather intelligence, and escape without being detected. Over the past months, Captain Lee had led dozens of such missions, building a complete picture of Veltar military strength and deployment. "Contact ahead," reported her sensor operator, Lieutenant Oh Sung-min. "Veltar patrol ship, moving along their standard route." "Shadow them," Captain Lee ordered. "Record everything, their speed, their scanning patterns, their communication protocols. Every piece of information might save human lives when the shooting starts." Her ship, the Swift Strike, followed the alien vessel for 6 hours, staying just outside their sensor range. The Veltar patrol followed exactly the same route Captain Nam had observed months earlier. They were predictable, which would be their downfall. Back on Luna, Admiral Choi Byung-ho met with his senior staff to review the progress of Operation Vengeful Thunder. The war room was filled with holographic displays showing ship construction schedules, training programs, and intelligence reports from deep space. "How many ships will be ready for the first wave?" the Admiral asked. Commander Hong Min-ji, who had been promoted to lead the new First Strike Fleet, consulted her tablet. 200 Retribution-class dreadnoughts, 500 Hunter-class frigates, and 300 support vessels. Not as many as we hoped for, but each ship is worth 3 or 4 conventional vessels. Dr. Yoon Hyejin pointed to a star chart showing Veltar space. "Captain Nam has identified 23 high-priority targets for simultaneous attack. If we can hit them all within a 6-hour window, we can destroy most of their shipbuilding capacity and military command structure." The plan was audacious. Instead of fighting a defensive war, humanity would strike deep into enemy territory with overwhelming force. The Veltar would never expect such aggression from a species they considered primitive. "What about casualties?" the Admiral asked grimly. The room fell silent for a moment. Everyone knew this would not be an easy victory. Many humans would die in the coming war. Colonel Bay spoke up. "My Marines understand the risks. Every man and woman in the assault battalions has lost someone to the Veltar. They are ready to pay any price for justice." Captain Lee added, "The frigate crews feel the same way. We have been running dangerous reconnaissance missions for months. We know what we are fighting for." Dr. Shin looked up from her computer displays. "The AI systems will help reduce casualties by giving our commanders perfect tactical information. But yes, we will lose ships and people. The Veltar are not weak enemies." Admiral Choi nodded slowly. He had commanded military forces for 30 years but had never faced a decision like this one. He was about to send thousands of humans into battle against an alien empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. But he remembered the recordings from New Busan Colony. He remembered the systematic murder of 3 million innocent people. He remembered that somewhere in Veltar space, alien commanders were probably planning to destroy more human colonies. "Then we proceed as planned," he said firmly. "The Veltar started this war when they decided humans were expendable. We will finish it by showing them that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy when you threaten our families." In the months that followed, human space became a beehive of activity. Every world contributed to the war effort. Miners worked double shifts to provide metals for ship construction. Factories converted from making civilian goods to producing weapons and armor. Universities sent their best students to join the military as officers and specialists. The people of human space were united by grief and anger. They had spent generations believing the galaxy was a peaceful place where different species could coexist. The Veltar had shattered that dream with their casual genocide. Now humanity would teach them the price of awakening a sleeping predator. On Luna, Chief Engineer Kang Dong-wook put the final touches on the first Retribution-class dreadnought. The massive ship gleamed under the construction bay lights, bristling with weapons and protected by armor that would turn enemy attacks back on themselves. He had named the ship New Busan's Vengeance, in honor of the colony that started this war. Soon it would carry human anger to the heart of the Veltar Empire. The edge of Veltar space had been quiet for centuries. No enemy had ever dared to challenge the mighty Confederation in their own territory. That peace ended when 3,000 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Admiral Choi Byung-ho stood on the bridge of his flagship, New Busan's Vengeance, watching the tactical displays as his massive fleet prepared for battle. Around him, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They had trained for this moment for months, and now it was time to make the Veltar pay for their crimes. "All ships report ready for combat," announced Commander Song Ki-tai, the Admiral's tactical officer. "The enemy is responding to our arrival." On the main screen, Veltar patrol ships moved to intercept the human fleet. There were only a dozen of them, standard border guards who had never faced a real threat. They were about to learn what human anger looked like when it was organized and armed. Fleet Commander Hong Minji led the first attack wave from her command ship, Righteous Fury. Behind her flew 200 Retribution-class dreadnoughts, their crystal-enhanced armor gleaming like mirrors in the light of the local star. "All ships, this is Hong Minji," she broadcast to her fleet. "Today we begin to balance the scales for New Busan Colony. Show them what happens when you murder human children." The battle began with devastating efficiency. Human weapons had been designed specifically to counter Veltar technology, and they worked perfectly. Energy beams that should have destroyed human ships were instead absorbed and reflected back at their attackers. Veltar vessels found their own weapons turned against them, their crystal hulls cracking under the power of their own energy blasts. The border patrol was wiped out in minutes. Not a single human ship was lost. Deeper in Veltar space, Captain Nam Woo-jin coordinated simultaneous attacks on 17 different targets. His months of dangerous reconnaissance work now paid off as human strike forces appeared exactly where they were needed, hitting enemy bases and shipyards with surgical precision. At the Kethamar shipyard, Commander Lee Sang-won led 50 Hunter-class frigates against the orbital construction facility. The shipyard was enormous, capable of building a dozen Veltar cruisers at once. It was also lightly defended because the Veltar had never imagined anyone would attack so deep in their territory. "Target the main power cores," Lee commanded, as his ship swept through the shipyard's defensive perimeter. "Destroy their ability to build new ships." Human plasma torpedoes struck the shipyard's fusion reactors, creating chain explosions that tore the massive facility apart. In 30 minutes, the Veltar lost the equivalent of 5 years of ship construction. The few defenders who survived sent panicked messages to their high command, reporting that impossible numbers of human ships had appeared from nowhere. On the fortress world of Krixnal, Colonel Bae Hyun-woo led the first ground assault in human history against an alien enemy. His Marines dropped from orbit in stealth pods, landing in the middle of the planet's main military complex. The Veltar defenders were caught completely off guard. Their rigid military doctrine had no provisions for enemies who would attack fortified positions with small, fast-moving infantry units. They expected large formations moving slowly and predictably. Instead, they faced human Marines who moved like ghosts through their crystal corridors, striking weak points with surgical precision before vanishing into ventilation shafts and maintenance tunnels. Sergeant Kim Hai-young led her squad through the fortress's command center, their powered armor allowing them to move at impossible speeds. The Veltar warriors they encountered were individually stronger and better armored, but they had never learned to fight an enemy that refused to follow the rules of conventional warfare. "There," she whispered to her team, pointing at a cluster of Veltar officers gathered around a tactical display. "Hit their joint weak points, then move before their automated defenses can target us." The attack lasted 3 seconds. When it was over, 8 Veltar commanders were dead, and the human Marines had already disappeared into the fortress's maze of passages. The surviving aliens found themselves cut off from their troops, their communication systems sabotaged, their tactical computers hacked by Dr. Shin's artificial intelligence programs. Meanwhile, Captain Lee Ga-yun used her detailed knowledge of Veltar patrol routes to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Her Hunter-class frigates appeared at the edge of enemy solar systems, launched devastating attacks on military installations, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. The Veltar communication networks, designed for their methodical style of warfare, could not cope with the speed and chaos of human tactics. Reports flooded in from across their empire. Shipyards destroyed, bases captured, fleets annihilated. The humans seemed to be everywhere at once, striking with impossible coordination and vanishing before counterattacks could be organized. In the Veltar capital system, High Commander Zekathara received the first reports with disbelief. According to his intelligence services, humans were a primitive species with limited military capabilities. They should have been cowering behind their defensive installations, not launching coordinated attacks across hundreds of light years of space. "How many human ships are we facing?" he demanded from his subordinates. "Estimates range from 1,000 to 5,000, my lord," replied his tactical advisor. "They are using advanced stealth technology and hit-and-run tactics. Our forces cannot maintain contact long enough for accurate counts." Zekathara studied the battle reports with growing alarm. In 6 hours of fighting, the humans had destroyed or damaged over 200 Veltar ships and facilities. More disturbing, they had done it with minimal losses to themselves. "Activate the reserve fleets," he ordered. "Recall all ships from garrison duty. I want every available vessel concentrated for a counterattack." But the humans had anticipated this response. Dr. Yoon's intelligence analysis had predicted exactly how the Veltar would react to the initial strikes. As enemy ships moved to concentrate their forces, they found human hunter-class frigates waiting along their routes. Captain Lee Gaeun's squadron ambushed a Veltar battle group as it rushed to reinforce their attacked shipyards. The alien ships were moving at maximum speed, their attention focused on reaching their destination quickly. They never saw the human frigates hiding in the shadow of an asteroid field. "All ships, fire on my mark," Lee commanded. Her vessels had been waiting motionless for hours, their stealth systems making them invisible to Veltar sensors. "Mark." 20 human ships opened fire simultaneously on the unsuspecting Veltar formation. The aliens' crystal armor, designed to absorb energy weapons, proved useless against the kinetic projectiles and plasma torpedoes that human engineers had specifically designed to counter their defenses. The ambush was over in minutes. 15 Veltar cruisers were destroyed or crippled, while the human frigates escaped without a single casualty. Similar ambushes took place across Veltar space as their fleets tried to respond to the human offensive. Every move they made had been anticipated. Every response had been planned for. The rigid Veltar military doctrine, successful for centuries against conventional enemies, became a liability against human adaptability. Admiral Choi watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The first phase of Operation Vengeful Thunder was succeeding beyond their best hopes. Human casualties were minimal, while the Veltar were losing ships and installations faster than they could count. But he knew this was only the beginning. The Veltar were shocked and confused, but they were not defeated. Once they recovered from their initial surprise, they would adapt their tactics and bring their full strength to bear against humanity. Commander Hong Minji's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, we have completed the destruction of the Veltar forward bases. Enemy resistance is collapsing across the border regions." "Excellent work," Choi replied. "Begin Phase 2 immediately. We cannot give them time to reorganize." Phase 2 of the human offensive targeted the Veltar's core systems, the heavily defended worlds where their government and military leadership were concentrated. These would be much harder targets, protected by massive defense fleets and orbital fortifications. But the humans had learned something important in the first hours of fighting. The Veltar were not invincible. Their technology was advanced, but it could be countered. Their warriors were skilled, but they could be defeated. Their empire was vast, but it had weaknesses that could be exploited. Most importantly, the Veltar had never faced an enemy driven by pure, focused rage. They had conquered species that fought for territory, resources, or political power. They had never fought a species that considered the murder of civilians to be the ultimate crime and was willing to cross the galaxy to punish those responsible. Taitu. Veltar Confederation had ruled this part of the galaxy for 2,000 years. They had destroyed dozens of worlds and enslaved millions of beings. Today, they learned what it meant to face humanity's wrath. The siege of Veltar Prime began at dawn on the third day of humanity's offensive. The alien homeworld hung in space like a jewel, its surface covered in crystal cities that sparkled in the light of their ancient sun. For 2,000 years, no enemy had threatened this world. Today, 300 human warships surrounded it like hungry wolves. Admiral Choi Byung-ho stood on the bridge of New Busan's Vengeance, looking at the planet that had ordered the death of 3 million humans. His fleet had swept through Veltar, space like a hurricane, destroying military bases and crippling their ability to wage war. Now came the final test. Enemy fleet approaching from the outer system, reported Commander Song Ki-tae. 800 ships including their most powerful dreadnoughts. They are moving to defend their homeworld. The admiral nodded grimly. The Veltar High Command had finally gathered their remaining forces for one last desperate battle. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history, and its outcome would decide the fate of both species. On the planet below, High Commander Zekthara prepared his people for what might be their final hours. The human attack had been devastating, beyond his worst nightmares. In 3 days they had destroyed over half of the Veltar military, and captured or devastated dozens of worlds. They are demanding our surrender, reported his communications officer. The human admiral is broadcasting terms on all frequencies. Zekthara listened to the alien voice speaking in accented but clear Veltar. The human demands were simple: complete withdrawal from all inhabited worlds they had conquered, reparations for the destroyed colonies, and submission to human oversight of their military forces. The High Commander's 4 eyes burned with rage. The Veltar had never surrendered to anyone. They were the chosen people of the galaxy, destined to rule over all lesser species. The idea of submitting to primitive mammals was unthinkable. Activate the planet killers, he ordered his weapons officers. If we cannot win this war, we will at least show these humans the price of defying us. Deep beneath the crystal cities of Veltar Prime, ancient weapons began to power up. The planet killers were devices of unimaginable destruction, capable of cracking worlds apart from the inside. The Veltar had used them to terrorize dozens of species into submission over the centuries, but they had never used them against a species that had already survived multiple extinction events on their own homeworld. Commander Hong Minji detected the energy buildup from her position with the main battle fleet. Her sensors showed massive power readings from the planet's core, the unmistakable signature of weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. Admiral, they are preparing to use planet killers, she reported over the communication system. If those weapons reach full power, they can destroy every ship in the system. Admiral Choi made his decision instantly. All ships, prepare for planetary bombardment. Target the weapon installations. We end this now. The final battle began with a display of firepower that lit up the entire star system. Human ships opened fire with every weapon they possessed, sending streams of energy and projectiles toward the alien homeworld. The planet's defensive shields flared and sparked under the assault, but they held. Captain Nam Woo-jin led a squadron of stealth ships through the defensive perimeter, using his intimate knowledge of Veltar technology to find weak points in their shields. His ship, Silent Arrow, slipped through the gaps like a ghost carrying a special cargo that would end the war. Deploying hunter-killer drones, he announced as his ship released a swarm of small robotic weapons. The drones scattered across the planet's surface, each one programmed with the location of critical Veltar installations. Dr. Shin's artificial intelligence guided them to their targets with deadly precision. On the planet's surface, Colonel Bae Hyun-woo and his Marines fought their way through the crystal streets of the capital city. The Veltar defenders fought with desperate courage, knowing that defeat meant the end of their empire. But human determination proved stronger. Sergeant Kim Hae-young led her squad through the underground tunnels toward the Planet Killer Control Center. The Veltar had hidden their most dangerous weapons deep beneath the city, but human intelligence had mapped every passage during months of careful planning. Contact ahead, whispered Private Lee Jin-ho as they approached the control chamber. 20 Veltar guards heavily armed. Standard breach protocol, Kim replied. Fast and hard. Do not give them time to activate the weapons. The battle in the tunnel lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, the path to the planet killers was clear. Kim's team placed explosive charges on the control systems and retreated to a safe distance. The explosions that followed could be felt across the entire planet. The ancient weapons that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries died in fire and twisted metal. Their threat ended forever. High Commander Zekathara felt the shockwaves from his command bunker and knew his last hope was gone. The humans had outfought. His fleets outmaneuvered his tactics and now destroyed his ultimate weapons. For the first time in Veltar history, they faced total defeat. "My lord," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving surrender offers from our fleet commanders. They are requesting permission to lay down their weapons." The High Commander looked at the tactical displays showing the destruction of his forces. Over 90% of the Veltar military was gone, destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive mammals. The humans had proven themselves to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. "Open a channel to the human admiral," Zekathara said finally. "I will speak with him directly." Admiral Choi accepted the communication on the bridge of his flagship. The alien face that appeared on his screen was proud and defiant, but also defeated. The Veltar leader knew he had no choice but to surrender. "I am High Commander Zekathara of the Veltar Confederation," the alien said in heavily accented English. "I wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict." "The terms are exactly what I stated before," Admiral Choi replied firmly. "Complete withdrawal from all conquered worlds, reparations for the colonies you destroyed, and submission to human oversight. You will also surrender all records of your military technology and the locations of any remaining weapons of mass destruction." Zekathara's 4 eyes flickered with anger, but he nodded slowly. "And if we accept these terms, then you live," the Admiral said simply. "Your people will be allowed to exist on their homeworld and their core colonies, but under human supervision. You will never again be allowed to threaten other species." The surrender document was signed 6 hours later. The Veltar Confederation, which had ruled this part of the galaxy for 2 millennia, ceased to exist as an independent power. Their military was disbanded, their weapons confiscated, and their government replaced by a council supervised by human administrators. Dr. Yoon Hye-jin established the monitoring protocols that would govern former Veltar space for generations to come. Every ship movement, every communication, every action taken by the former conquerors would be watched and recorded by human AI systems that never forgot and never forgave. Captain Lee Gae-yoon led the first survey missions to the liberated worlds, documenting the crimes the Veltar had committed against dozens of species. The records would ensure that the galaxy never forgot what happened when an empire decided that other sentient beings were expendable. In the years that followed, the former Veltar territories became a peaceful zone under human protection. The species that had been enslaved or threatened by the Confederation found themselves free to develop their own cultures and technologies. Many chose to join the growing alliance of worlds that looked to humanity for protection and guidance. On Earth, a memorial was built to honor the victims of New Busan Colony. Kim Sora, the sole survivor of that terrible day, spoke at the dedication ceremony. Her words were broadcast across human space and beyond, carried by the communication networks that now connected hundreds of peaceful worlds. "The people of New Busan died because we thought the galaxy was a safe place for good people," she said to the assembled crowd. "Their sacrifice taught us that peace must be defended with strength and that justice sometimes requires terrible choices." She paused, looking up at the stars that no longer held unknown terrors. "But they also showed us what we could become when we stand together." The Veltar thought they were conquering weak farmers and merchants. Instead, they awakened the most dangerous force in the galaxy, humans who refused to let evil go unpunished. The memorial bore a simple inscription in Korean and dozens of other languages. "Here we remember those who showed us that the price of peace is eternal vigilance, and the cost of harming humans is absolute destruction." In the decades that followed, no alien species would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness. The story of how humanity responded to the destruction of New Busan Colony became legend throughout the galaxy. It was told as a warning to those who might consider threatening peaceful beings, and as a promise to those who needed protection. The Veltar had made a simple mistake. They had calculated the military strength of human colonies and found them wanting. They had analyzed human technology and judged it primitive. They had studied human expansion patterns and concluded that they were not a threat. But they had never bothered to learn about human nature.